Welcome to What Grows. It's a podcast where we play with the connection between who we are and how we grow. I'm your host, Noella Moshi. So, Hannah, your work is about turning research into real impact. You spent your career making evidence-based solutions accessible to the people who need them the most and ensuring policy reflects real lives. From your early days managing food programs to JPAL to the project we worked on together, you stayed committed to strengthening the social safety net. And now you're also an educator. You have been a play director. Your claim to fame in my household is you directed a play with Megan Fahey in it.
That's true.
And yeah, and you're just a kind human being. So after we worked together, I knew I wanted to be your friend. And I was like
Mm.
very focused about that. I was like, Hannah, we're hanging. So I'm excited for this conversation. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here.
So my warm-up question, if you could give your life a title, like it was a book, what would it be?
It's funny to think about it kind of cumulatively versus in sort of the phase of life I'm in, kind of in this present moment. The thing that kind of came to mind immediately, uh, harkening back almost to sort of you did a very good job sort of overviewing my past life experiences. Another thing I was really passionate about as a young person, for better or worse, was poetry and creative writing, and I think I tend toward alliteration. And so the title that kind of came to mind was something like looking for light, looking for the lighthouse, looking for something. I think without jumping too far ahead, you kind of catch me at a moment in my career, in my life, where I feel like I'm looking for that thing that kind of lights me up again. And so that's sort of what came up. Um, I'll stick with that. That felt genuine and real. So let's keep it looking for the lighthouse. We'll call it.
I has that feeling been there? Is it recognizable now? Have you sensed it before?
I think so. I think when I think back even to sort of my younger self and sort of what I wanted or was looking for, I always kind of was enamored with this idea of being the wanderer, the traveler. I've always really been interested in people, drawn to things, kind of curious, eager to learn new things. And so even when I think back to sort of my youngest years, I remember being a high school student and just desperate to travel, see other places, see other things, learn from others. And so I think it's maybe taken on a different energy in different times in my life and sort of what I'm seeking or searching for. But yeah, I think there's always kind of been an exploration sort of trait somewhere in there, kind of unifying all the different phases of my life.
Yeah, when you say exploration, I think adventure. I also think
Mm.
risk taking.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's funny you say that. I speaking of sort of, risk taking, I always think of myself actually as kind of a risk averse person. I can be a little anxious sometimes. I think I like to think things through. And I was sharing a story actually with a new coworker of mine. One of the perks of working at the particular prep school I work at is that they feed the employees lunch in the cafeteria every day, which is a great way to connect with all kinds of people from all over campus. And I was reflecting and telling this story about when I was I think I was 19 years old. Kind of on a whim, I decided for a summer I wanted to be an au pair, which is, a nanny that lives pretty much always abroad in a family's home, and in exchange for childcare, and basically sort of free room and board. Au pairs are often paid a stipend. You become a live-in member of a family that you've probably never really spent a lot of time with before. And, this is a different time. This is like 2010. And I was telling this coworker about how I had found this family in France. And spoiler alert, it all worked out. This family, it was such an incredible, amazing experience. But I literally found them on this website called aupairworld.net. And I convinced my parents, 19-year-old me, was going to get on a plane and fly to France and commit 4 months of my life to nannying a sweet little 3.5-year-old boy named Hugo and living with this family. And I think I spoke with them on Skype once or twice, bought my ticket, and just went. And I remember I showed up at Charles de Gaulle Airport where a driver was going to meet me. They lived outside of Orleans, France. And I didn't have this was 2010, right? So we don't have smartphones the same way. And I had Hélène, Hugo's mom's like phone number on a crumpled up piece of paper in my pocket. And I was waiting and waiting and waiting, expecting to see a driver saying like Hannah or, Hélène Martin, the name of the woman who I was going to work for. And none of this was happening. And I was starting to get a little nervous. And I figure out how to use the payphone in like the airport lobby to call her. She's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know where he is, but don't worry. Someone's coming for you." But in that like 15 minutes or 20 minutes, as I was sort of weighing what to do, I really thought, wow, did I just fly to this country for nothing? Like for no reason? Like, is this actually, it's all fake? And like when I think about that now as a woman in my 30s, it's like, yeah, that was insane. Like that was a big risk. That was a huge risk. I didn't know these people. I was going to go live in their house for 4 months. But yeah, maybe I am more of a risk taker than I give myself credit for.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I think you just might be. One of the things that I've kind of learned, and now it's not super helpful anymore, is like when I'm in a new place, I walk super fast.
Mm.
It's like I know where I'm going and I never do because I have a terrible sense of direction, but I'm so afraid of looking lost, you know?
Yeah. Yes. Oh, that resonates with me so much in so many ways. So much. I totally hear you. It's like focus on a point in the middle distance, kind of mean mug, just walk straight ahead. So, like, literally, I can think of exactly what you mean, not wanting to look lost. But yeah, even just sort of thinking about sort of the choices I have made in my life, there's sort of a fear of looking lost to others. I think we, as a culture, particularly here in the States, I think we really value and prioritize sort of this idea that you have it all figured out, your 5-year plan, your 10-year plan, everything is intentional, it fits together like bricks and sort of builds up toward this sort of crescendo. And it's just, I don't know that I'd ever sort of put those things together, but I think you really put words to a sensation, I think, that I have felt in my own life and something I've kind of been reflecting on a little bit in this sort of new moment of my career. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Fear and then kind of uh, I don't know if it's the opposite, but then fear leading to courage because something that and I'm gonna speak for you, so you let me know where I'm missing the mark.
Okay, sure.
But
Sure.
something that I've seen in you is I don't know the internal kind of happenings, but whether or not there's fear, you go for it
Mm,
anyway. You like
mm.
completely switched sectors, for example.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a fear of looking lost, and
Mm,
also you dived right in. You mentioned
mm,
oh, they're total strangers in a different continent, so that's like a
mhm.
little bit worrying, but also you went.
Yeah.
And I think about well, really, it's the Enneagram. It's this like personality thing that I'm obsessed
Sure.
with. But they talk
Mm,
about counterphobic sixes, especially, but just like this idea that because I am afraid, I
mm,
act with like an unsettling, almost unsettling amount of courage because
mm,
I am fighting that fear very actively.
mm, mm. Yeah, it makes me wish that I knew what Enneagram number I was. I know of it as a tool. It's not one I've sort of done for myself. I think if you were to sort of look at sort of some choices I've made and just to sort of put it all on the table, right? I think the choice we're sort of kind of naming or talking about without naming it is that I changed sort of sectors, as you shared. We had the opportunity to meet at my role just before this. I was uh, the director of a pilot program to help low income families sort of navigate a phenomenon called the benefits cliff, which if listeners don't know what that is, it's sort of the phenomenon where a low income worker receiving some number of safety net benefits, whether that's food stamps or housing assistance, sees a change in their earnings, often for the better. They earn more money. But because of the way income requirements are set up for many of these programs, that increase in income often penalizes them with a disproportionate loss of benefits. So you might earn an extra $2 an hour, but the loss of benefits actually is more than that $2 an hour you're earning. And so financially you're worse off. And so it's just blown my mind that that's the way the system sort of works. And I feel really deeply and strongly it shouldn't work that way. And so um, this role, seemed really aligned. Um, But, after some time, it just really became clear to me that personally, the way that being in that job felt just wasn't really aligning with what I needed at that time anymore. It was such worthy work, so important, such an amazing opportunity to really shape a policy problem. But like point blank, I think I was just burnt out, and I think that burnout actually is, as I sort of take more time in my new job with more mental space to kind of reflect on that. I think that burnout had probably followed me from other places. It didn't just sort of appear all at once. Um, but it just, I it just wasn't serving me sort of in the day to day. I found myself getting sort of trapped in these kind of thought loops. It was really hard for me to let it go, and I was really sort of losing myself in the work. Um, for lots of reasons, I think, but it felt really scary to leave that behind because for so long it felt like this is exactly where I wanted to be, in the exact room I wanted to be in, with the exact people I wanted to be in, really sort of trying to figure this out. And realizing that intellectually that might still be true, but in my body, like in the way I felt, I wasn't able to be in that space really. It felt really hard to sort of weigh those pros and cons, I think, both because I think it's sort of hard to admit, like, oh, actually, maybe I'm not in an okay place and maybe I am burned out and I need to try something radically different to sort of address that and heal that, I think, really at like a core level. But also not looking lost. It's sort of like I had spent, you can tell any kind of story you want about a career ultimately, but there were lots of pieces of mine that I think were sort of leading me to this place, and that I had spent a lot of time and years trying to really intentionally get myself to that place. And so to suddenly get there and feel like, oh, wait, actually, maybe this is not right for now. I still believe that one day I will find myself back in a room such as that. Um, but it's hard to admit, I think, that maybe I was wrong or I wasn't sure or something has changed. I think we don't really allow a lot of space for people to change their mind or to sort of recognize that needs have changed. And so it took a long time to come to a place where I finally was able to make that decision for myself, to sort of admit that first to myself. And then, because I'm a woman, it feels like to let everyone else down and say that I can't be here right now and I have to pass the torch to somebody else. I'm not the right person to be doing this at this time. Um, it was scary, and hard. But I think I'm proud of myself for doing it, even if sometimes I look back on it and think, the temptation is always to say, well, what if I had done this or what if I had done that? But I have to remind myself, not often, but every once in a while, um, that even though it was scary and hard, it was totally the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jim Carrey, of all
Oh,
people, says
what a segue. Oh, I can't wait. What does Jim Carrey say?
Jim Carrey says, "I wish that everyone would get everything they could possibly want for themselves so that they would realize that it doesn't bring them happiness."
Oh, I
And
actually think yes, because yeah, that's so interesting. I feel like he's sort of taken a turn and doesn't really act anymore and is a painter these days, right? And I think maybe I've seen a similar interview or
maybe,
something with him where
yes.
he said that. Yeah, I wish everyone could get everything they want so they realize it doesn't make them happy. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, it's really around writing, and I just, like, want to
Mm.
get my manuscript published, but
Mhm.
if I if I am not enjoying it right now, the act of waking up every morning and doing it, then that external validation is just not going to do it for me. It'll be one short, sharp, potentially, like, addictive
Yes.
rush, and then I'm
Yes.
back alone with
Yes.
my own thoughts again. And I mean, the wisdom of the body. I have a friend, Anne, who actually does, it's something called polyvagal theory, and she
Mm.
talks about, yeah, nervous system's first approach to life and to work, and the fact
Mm.
that all of our wisdom, our just accumulated wisdom, is in our body waiting to be accessed if we're just still enough, and trying to
Mm,
make decisions kind of using just like the brain and like a flow of information that's kind of limited as opposed to staying still.
mm.
um you're missing out on all the stuff that you do know. And so the fact that, well, when you said my body, it just didn't feel right in my body, that meant something to me.
Yeah, I love thinking about that, and I think something that I grappled with certainly while I was in the job, something I've reflected on now that I'm in sort of this new space. Particularly as somebody who comes from, you named that, a big part of my career was sort of connecting the dots between academic research and policymaking. That's a very rational, kind of scientific, quantifiable sort of way to view the world. And so I think, particularly having spent so much time grounded in sort of the research evidence and sort of really letting my brain kind of lead a lot of those things, or sort of being in a space where what we know sort of in our heads maybe is more valued than sort of what we know in our core or the way we feel. I think it took me a long time to kind of come to the place where I was comfortable letting my body be the one that got to call the shots in that moment, right?
Mm.
Um, because I think, to be honest, I think I had been sort of fighting it. When I said earlier, I felt like it was burnout I had carried probably from previous roles into this role that certainly got amplified with the pressures of the job, and sort of feeling like how high stakes it could be. Um, I think I had sort of been fighting that feeling a long time, and it would show up for me in a tight stiff neck, or that pit in your stomach, or the fluttery feeling you get in your chest before you're gonna, I don't know, have what feels like a high stakes meeting with somebody, or stand up in front of a bunch of people, and who knows what. But I'm glad to be in a place now. One of the things I was sort of seeking in another role was sort of a sense of stillness, a sense of space, kind of mentally. And I think having that mental space has really given me sort of a stillness in my mind that has given me the space to kind of tap in or listen more deeply or something. It's not a skill I think we probably all have this skill innately. But I think over time, because of the demands of life and work and the society we live in, we slowly sort of disconnect from our ability. I think I won't speak for everyone, but at least I think in my experience, to sort of tap into what the body or what my nervous system is trying to tell me, because so many other external forces have told me that other things are more important.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was thinking a little bit about now, so I work at this school now, and I work in our summer programs office. In the summers, they bring different groups of students to camp, and I've just been reflecting on sort of this idea of childlike wonder and sort of unadulterated. Sort of getting back to maybe what I was saying a little bit about how we sort of lose our ability to connect with our body. I think similarly, adults sort of lose their ability to connect with that childlike curiosity and wonder. And something I'm so looking forward to is just sort of being among young people again, and getting to sort of observe them, at its core, having fun, but also just sort of like being free to be themselves and try new things and meet new people. And there's something about sort of seeing the world, I think, again, not that I'm particularly old, but through a younger person's eyes, that I'm just really looking forward to, and I think is going to really kind of help me on my own journey to sort of like reconnect to those parts of myself that I think I've eschewed or sort of dropped off over time in favor of career aspirations, or what I thought others expected of me.
I want to ask you about the young people and working with them. But first, I want to reflect um, on the lies that you maybe were telling yourself back
Mm,
then for the past 10 years versus
mm,
the truths you're telling yourself now.
mm,
Um, some lies that I know I've told myself. There was a job that I love, and it was nothing to do with the actual work. But after I went on vacation, a 2-week vacation, like literally day 2 of the vacation, I was like, I need to quit that job.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
couldn't tell for like 2 years that I needed to quit
Hmm.
one day of vacation, and it all fell away. And the lies were, this is all up to me. If I don't do this, my people, the people I care about, will suffer.
Hmm.
If everything goes wrong, or if anything goes wrong, it's my fault. And like, why can't I be good enough to do this by myself? All lies.
Mm. Hmm.
Some of the truths I'm telling myself now, and they're not directly related, but I am impressive in my squiggly career path.
Hmm.
I am brave in kind of trying new things and putting my voice out there.
Hmm.
I don't know I don't know how, this one's received, but it's very comforting for me. Nobody actually really cares what I do, so I might as well do what I want.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, thanks for sharing those. I think I think there are some similar threads probably in my the lies I told my previous self. And to be honest, I think it's really hard, I think, sometimes to let go of, whether you want to call them limiting beliefs or not. They're powerful. Um I really resonated with sort of what you said. It all falls to me. If I don't do this, no one can do this. And I think kind of a for better or worse, a lot of the environments I've worked in over the years have been sort of nonprofit organizations, right? Great missions, often limited in resources and staff to accomplish those really amazing missions. And so I don't know if it's a lie or a truth, but I think sometimes I've always had a really hard time disentangling that particular lie from like the reality of what I'm also experiencing in real time, which is that we're trying to do a lot and there's not a lot of us at the table here to get it done. Um, but I think, in letting go sort of the most recent role, where I was the director and really sort of in charge of a lot of the pieces of executing that vision, maybe it's a lie I've told myself, asking for help is weakness.
Yeah. I know
Hmm.
that one.
Hmm. And, you know, I think whether I'm living the truth of actually asking for help, I think what I am trying to be more truthful about to myself and others is sort of really where are my boundaries or my limits, and trying to be clearer about what those are. I think first to myself, I want to do it all. Why can't I do it all? Um, but then also to sort of others in my life about, yes, I can do this, but that I cannot. Or that feels good and aligned and that does not. For a long time, I think the lie I sort of told myself is, the only valid success is career success. And it's, there's probably lots of places that that comes from, right? I happen to be the child of, two parents who have master's degrees. Granted, my dad is a master's of fine art. He's a painter, right? But I have educated parents. Education was always something really valued in my household growing up. My mom was a teacher. In fact, she was actually my teacher for a few years in middle school. It's a story for another time. Um, but I really just sort of felt that attaining education and sort of attaining an upwardly mobile career path was the thing that was going to make me worthy and valued to myself and others. And I've sort of been thinking a little bit about what that looks like for me now. I think, especially, one thing I think I've sort of observed now that I'm kind of very solidly in my mid 30s is it feels like we kind of let women be two things. We let some women be really career driven, and that is their identity. Maybe they're moms too, but maybe their career is sort of how they're sort of primarily viewed in the world. Or you're a mother. And where does that leave sort of people in the middle? like myself. Like I don't have children. Maybe that's something I'll do someday. But right now I don't have children. And it's always been really interesting to me to just sort of observe the way we incentivize, the way we talk about women sort of at this stage in their life. I don't know, it's just sort of funny. We kind of don't know what to do with women in that kind of space, who maybe are figuring themselves out or what they want next or what hobbies are important to them or exploring different creative energy that isn't for work or for raising children. I don't know that I have the answer to
Yeah.
that just yet, but it's something I've been sort of
That
reflecting on lately.
yeah. I mean, okay. So first of all, I have a 2-year-old,
Yeah.
and the moment she was born, like the first 3 months, I realized, one, I just don't matter that much to everyone
Mm,
around me. They were so obsessed with her and not with
yeah.
me, and I was so
Mm,
used to being the center of attention when she was in my belly, so I had to really recalibrate to not being the main character in my own life, and then 2, because I got hit hard with postpartum depression and
yeah.
anxiety,
Yeah.
I suddenly needed to ask for help for things
Mm,
that honestly, like, it was kind of I felt embarrassed about doing that. And so,
mm.
forget career, I didn't have get
Right.
out of bed and drive to the
Right.
grocery
Right.
store. And then I spent a bunch of time, if I'm honest, like, feeling sorry for myself, like, who am I if I don't have any of this and I rely on Tom, my husband, for help, etcetera. And then another bunch of time feeling angry, like, I still am a full human being, and, like, I
Mm,
obviously would I would protect her with my life, and my life matters too.
mm,
And why is no one pointing that out anymore?
mm.
Don't get me started on the sagging and the body changing and the hormones and just like
Totally. Totally.
I
Totally. The
am
lack of sleep. Yeah.
yes, I went from being, like, pretty irritated if someone would kind of signal that they thought I was physically attractive to, like, very pleasantly shocked and surprised. Like, I just
That's a big shift, yeah.
it
Don't you
was
dare
like, "Oh."
catcall me to like, well, I still don't love that, but I'm a little flattered, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm like, "What? Oh, I'm a woman. Oh, that's right.
Yeah. That's right. Someone could
I'm
want
also a
me.
sexual being." Yes.
Right. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I think I'm saying all this from the lens of having the toddler, but it is
Mm,
so obvious to me that
mm.
that's, like, the same just journey that all women go through where, I would add the layers of time where it's like
Yeah.
there's, like, you're physically attractive, then you're invisible, then you're meant to be wise and kind and giving and give and give and
Mm,
give,
mm.
and what does it mean to rebel against that? I think it incites anger, confusion,
Yes. Yeah.
alienation? Like,
Yep.
yeah, what does it look like for you?
You know, I think, yeah, I think people just don't know what box to put you in. We all want a heuristic, right? Like we all want sort of the like cheat sheet to sort of understand someone and how they move through the world and how I relate to them. And I think there's a couple ways that I sort of befuddle people. Yeah, I think I'm still sort of learning to just sort of trust my gut and do what's right for me instead of getting caught up in sort of people being unsure where to slot me, you know?
And doing all that without being defensive or bitter is hard.
For sure.
It's so hard on, like, both sides, both ends of whatever spectrum. Like, for example, there's just, like, very happily child-free women,
Yes.
and then
Oh,
there are
yes.
militantly child-free women
Yeah.
who are not happy that other people are having children. There are very happy moms, and then there are just, like, really intense moms that are like, "Why isn't everyone else a mother right now?" You know?
Yes. Yes.
And to navigate all of that without taking it on is hard.
I think for me, the reticence to sort of dive into motherhood is actually the reverence for motherhood and child rearing and how profound I think it can be and important and how intentional I would want to be about it. You're not only for that individual person that you're creating and shaping and supporting, But because they're going to go on to be part of like a bigger and broader thing. Um, and so I wish there was more space in the conversation. I think, as you know, it does really feel kind of very polarized. It's either like you're with us or you're not with us. Um, I think a lot about like the current political discourse about how we have in America the birth rate is declining. How do we get more women to decide to have children? And I think because we can't talk about it in this nuanced sort of way or really appreciate how kind of all consuming it can be, that we're just not coming up with good solutions because we're not thinking about how to support the moms and parents, all parents. But I think birthing parents in particular take on
Yeah.
a totally different experience biochemically because it's part and parcel of what happens, but also because society sort of puts that on you.
When you said that part about we're not having honest conversations about
Mm,
motherhood, that
mm,
struck a physical chord in me. I just felt
mm.
this rush, this memory of rage
Yeah.
from postpartum really,
Mm,
where people expect you to be just like over the moon. And yes, it's an amazing gift, but also so much is taken. So much is taken, and it's not okay to say so. And generations of women have withheld from saying so. And it is like underlying that expectation almost that women are beasts of burden. Like it's
yeah.
okay to be ripped open and have a living being come out. Like that's normal. That's oh good. Then that means you like gave birth vaginally. That's great. You know,
Yeah. Oh, it's natural. It's supposed
it's
to be that way.
natural.
Right.
And and I think there's an opportunity here. I mean,
Mm,
whoever you are, to just, like, have really honest conversations about how hard it is to care for others, and I
mm,
think that has, like, system level effects, not just in terms of fertility rates, but in
yeah.
terms of valuing this work, period, with, like,
Yes. Yeah. Caregiving
nannies,
work.
with, like, care yes,
Hmm.
and because across board, and I don't know if it's biology or it's just, like, generations of culture, but because women just like kind of put so much on themselves.
Mm.
Now we are living in this world where we're going to have to walk it back a little. Like, no, this wasn't, I don't want to do this for free anymore. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I, yeah. You don't have to be a pessimist, but I think realism is important. And I wish so much that the conversation around parenthood, certainly motherhood, but I'll even broaden it to parenthood, we could appreciate that many things can be true at once. It's hard to do, but I really want to believe that we as people can hold multiple truths at once. Being a mother is beautiful and is a really special bond that you create between yourself and a little person that your body made. It's also exhausting. You also run the risk of losing yourself in that endeavor. Our generation, we're similar in age, I think are changing that narrative a little bit. And I feel lucky to have friends who have already taken the plunge into motherhood because I feel, you can never be prepared. There's never the right time, yada, yada, all the sort of, tropes and sort of things we say about it. But I feel really grateful that they've been really honest about their experience so that, you know, the postpartum hormones are going to do what they're going to do. And I might be really pissed anyway, but like, it's not because no one told me, you know?
Mm, mm.
Yeah, I just think so many, I think a thing I'm really trying to do more in my life, speaking of sort of new truths we're trying to live, I guess taking it back to sort of your question about lies we used to tell ourselves and truths we're sort of in pursuit of now. Yeah, I think just being really honest about our experiences and, leaving that job and sort of telling everyone this is not right for me right now. I'm really burnt out. It felt like some sort of small sort of victory and step for myself in being able to do that and being able to be here in this conversation with you and sort of being able to say, yeah, I'm on the fence about parenthood because I think it's not a small step to take and I see the pros and I see the cons and not everyone would sort of invite you to have that conversation, but also sort of hold that kind of messy space for all those sort of feelings and thoughts together.
And the the counterfactual sometimes it's just so hard to tell, but
Mm.
my hypothesis is mother versus not mother, whatever, life is still hard or fun or, you know,
And both.
complicated.
Sometimes both. 9
Yeah.
a.m. was hard, but 11 a.m. was fun, and it's the same day,
Yeah.
right? Like, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one thing, but the other thing that I want to make sure I say because I think about it a lot. I think about what I enjoyed about working with you, and
Mm.
it's really that you're a storyteller in a
Mm.
way that I really admire
Mm.
because I came into this role well, you hired me as a consultant to kind of
Mhm.
support with launch, and
Yes.
I did not know anything about US policy or the benefits cliff, and I was like, "I need to learn this, hit the ground running," and it was story time, like, every other day. I'm like, "Hannah, what's going on?" And you're like, "Well, 3 years ago,"
Yeah.
and, and I think it is remarkable given all of the moving pieces that everyone knew exactly what was happening, was on the
Mm.
same team about it, and was
Mm.
willing to talk about it.
Mm.
And I think that's a testament to your value of honesty and your
Mm.
value of transparency. And
Mm.
I think there's just so much politicking and mental load that can be
Yeah.
avoided by just being transparent. And so, yeah, I think that's special and I think you probably carry that and other traits like the courage and yeah, all of that. I think the drama because I also like how you like express yourself and there's something there that's continuing whether you're in policy work or education or whatever you choose to do next.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. It's the storytelling is probably a holdover from my theater days that you mentioned at the top.
Do
Yeah,
you
I
have
think
that anymore? Like, do you tell
no,
stories now?
not so much, I would say, but I do like doing it. Yeah, I really kind of lost that part of myself, I think, if I'm being really honest. When I was 22, I moved out to Portland, Oregon with my best friend and my boyfriend at the time. And they were both they were an electronic music duo together. And so they made music and they were very, externally creative in that way. They would rehearse together, they would play shows all the time and I would go and I would I don't want to just call myself a groupie because that comes with so many negative connotations, but I was there at every show, cheering them on, getting to know that community in Portland, through them. Portland at that time too was such a cheap place to live that I felt like everybody my age, again in their early 20s, worked super part-time and then pursued their art the rest of the time. And at that time, I was working as an AmeriCorps member, which was sort of my first real kind of stint in public service. I worked in an elementary school, teaching service learning to second and third grade students, but also helping to manage a emergency food program for about 100 of the most food insecure students at school to make sure that they had pantry stable food items on weekends when we weren't totally sure that they were guaranteed a meal once they sort of left school, which provided breakfast, lunch, and dinner if they were part of the after school program. Um, and I remember having sort of a really, maybe it wasn't intense at the time, but sort of this rift that sort of started to form around my own identity, which was, oh, they are artists and I am not. And I kind of think back to that time as sort of maybe the start of the disintegration of the part of my identity that is a creative person, and now we're talking 12 years ago or so. So I think it will be a slow journey sort of back to that place,
Mm.
but I'd like to get there, I think.
Yeah, and the danger of definition is
Yeah.
really coming up as a theme here.
Mm.
Labels like artist, mother or not mother,
Mm.
like
Mm.
career
Mhm.
versus I've been talking to a few people who just there's no real like linear progression in their
Mm.
career, but
Mm.
there are themes, there are threads
Mm.
of skills that they continue to learn and of ways that they add value, whether it's like systems thinking or just being really good at categorizing, just, connecting
Mm,
people.
mm.
And when we start to self-apply the labels, it's one thing when externally they're applied, but when we spend the time to like wrestle with these labels internally, I think a rift does start. You're right.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about something that the last time you and I went on a walk, we were talking a little bit about. You said something that just really struck me, and I've still just been sort of turning it over in my head since we last spent time together. And we were talking about this idea of sort of entrepreneurship. And, thinking about labels or sort of identities we give ourselves, I think I felt always from a very young age that running my own business, entrepreneurship, sort of making my own thing was not for me. And I'm still not totally sure where that idea came from. But the conversation you and I were having was a little bit around, you know, as an immigrant yourself and sort of like the immigrant experience often coming from either different cultures or moving into a new culture is you often have to make the thing happen for yourself. No one's inviting you. You just have to sort of make the space and claim it. And this is what I'm doing. And this is my thing. And in particular, I think you were talking about sort of the context in Africa, Nigeria and Tanzania, and that, and often sort of the formal employment economy can be limited. And so people have to just sort of make something for themselves. Like, I'm interested in this, or I'm good at this, or I want to do this. And so this is a job I've just invented for myself. And I think the way we think is so often connected to the networks of people we know and the culture of people that we sort of immerse ourselves in. And so kind of coming back to this labels idea, I think a lot about sort of the Western cultural value of, yes, there's the story in America of sort of pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do it yourself. But there's also so much about like playing by the rules. And I feel like somehow, somewhere, I sort of slotted myself into the play it by the rules category. And so I think one thing I've kind of let happen in my life is sort of letting others assign my value or letting sort of the external signposts assign the value instead of me assigning the value, right? In Portland, I'm 22, one person's a fiber artist or an illustrator. And since I'm not those things, they just think of me like, oh, yeah, she works at the elementary school. I don't know, she does the thing at the school. So, like, she's not, and sort of letting that just kind of slowly over time, I think it just really kind of erodes at that. If you let it, erodes at that sort of sense of yourself. Um, and so I've just been sort of thinking about that idea a little bit lately, sort of, whether it's about starting your own business or really just sort of making something happen or making something true for yourself first and sort of letting everyone else kind of have that kind of fall into line because you're telling them that's exactly who you are and what you are, you know?
Yes. Oh, I am so excited for my 40s and my 50s. I
Yeah.
feel like I will be unstoppable.
Oh,
All the
yeah.
labels are going this decade, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It's amazing how different it can feel even just 12 years later, sort of in your own body. But clearly, I'm still learning and working on it, right? I mean, like, it's all a journey. And it's not
Yeah.
like I've arrived at a final destination, but I don't know if I was 22, if I would have felt confident enough to say, despite sort of the external appearance of success and like this job is exactly where I should be, I can't do it anymore. And I need to take a break and I need to try something else. And I need to sort of care for myself first, I think I would have been much too scared to do that then. So I don't know. Growth is
Mhm.
incremental, I guess. But yeah, it's
Growth.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so my last question is
Yeah.
about looking forward.
Mm.
What excites you the most about what's coming up for you?
Mm. That's a good question. I mean, I think before we sort of started formally recording, I had mentioned, since I work in the summer programs office, a lot of the year is getting ready for summer, and um, while I was getting ready for summer, I had the opportunity to go to a few camp fairs, which is a place, a year ago I would have said, "What?" But it was really fun and I had a great time. And I was able to talk to some prospective students for some of our programs. And I just didn't realize how much I love talking to young people. I love their energy. I love their curiosity. I love their earnestness. I love, and obviously as we age, talking to an 11-year-old is different than a 17-year-old, but there's still some of those common threads even when you get to sort of an older age. And those little micro moments kind of through the winter into the spring have just made me so excited to see this group of kids on campus and to just sort of get to be a part of making magic for them. I mean, my role, I'm not necessarily, directly teaching these kids. I'm definitely more in a program sort of role, making sure the trains are running on time and they have everything that they need. And, um, but I'm so looking forward to just having their energy in my space and getting to sort of observe them just being their weird little selves. I'm just looking forward. Yeah, I think like, I don't know how to quite describe it, but it's energy. I feel like I'm on the precipice of like being around and like receiving a lot of different energy. So I'm looking forward to having youthful energy around me to sort of remind me what's fun and remind me that there's magic if we just look for it. The other thing, speaking of my garden,
Hmm.
I just, yeah, I feel like I'm in this phase where I just want to watch stuff grow. Like, seems like I want to watch these young students sort of grow and be together. I want to literally watch the tomatoes in my garden grow. And I just sort of want to be like like, I don't know why this is the image that's coming up, but I'm going to share it anyway. Kind of like a lizard on a rock, just like
Hmm.
soaking it all in, like soaking in the sun in my garden, soaking in this like infectious, yes, sometimes obnoxious adolescent energy that's about to be in my space for the whole month of July at work. Um, but I think I need that. I'm trying to dip back into my body, into my feelings, and I think those things are just really gonna help be a bridge to sort of see and find those qualities in myself.
A lizard on a rock.
A lizard on
That's
a
fun.
rock.
I did not expect you to say that.
Me neither. It just came
Funny.
up. I don't know.
I love
Um,
it.
yeah,
Well, all right.
yeah.
Well, thank you, Hannah. This has been really fun. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm also always looking for guests who enjoy meaningful conversations. If that sounds like you, please send me a message and let me know what you'd like to talk about. I'll get back to you. Thanks for listening.